The morning mist clung to the ancient stones of Windsor Castle as Camilla Parker Bowles stepped from her Bentley, her heels clicking against the cobblestones with practiced precision. It was April 2005, and she had finally achieved what many thought impossible. She was now the Duchess of Cornwall, married to the heir to the British throne. The woman who had been vilified for decades as the third person in Charles and Diana's marriage had somehow managed to rehabilitate her image and secure her place in the royal family. Camilla understood power in ways that few others did. She had watched from the shadows as Diana captivated the world with her beauty and compassion, and she had learned valuable lessons about public perception and royal influence. Now, at 57, she was determined to carve out her own space within the monarchy, to prove that she could be more than just Charles's controversial second wife. The early years of her marriage to Charles were carefully orchestrated. Camilla knew she could never compete with Diana's memory in terms of public affection, so she chose a different path. She focused on causes that mattered deeply to her: literacy, domestic violence, and animal welfare. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes, building relationships with charities and organizations that would become the foundation of her royal role. Her approach was methodical and patient. While other members of the royal family sought the spotlight, Camilla preferred to work in the background, accumulating influence quietly. She understood that real power in the monarchy came not just from titles and ceremonies, but from being indispensable to the future king. Charles relied on her judgment, her steady presence, and her ability to navigate the complex world of royal politics. By 2010, Camilla had established herself as a formidable presence within the royal household. She had successfully integrated into the family's public duties, and her approval ratings, while never soaring, had reached a respectable level. She attended state banquets, represented the monarchy at official functions, and had begun to develop her own loyal following among certain segments of the British public. The palace staff respected her professionalism and her understanding of royal protocol. Unlike some who married into the family and struggled with the constraints of royal life, Camilla embraced the structure and hierarchy. She knew exactly where she stood in the line of precedence, and she played her role with dignity and purpose. Her relationship with the Queen was particularly important. Elizabeth II had initially been resistant to Charles's relationship with Camilla, understanding the public relations nightmare it created. But over time, she had come to appreciate Camilla's steadying influence on her son and her commitment to royal duty. The Queen valued loyalty above almost everything else, and Camilla had proven herself loyal to the institution of the monarchy. Camilla also cultivated relationships with the media, understanding that she needed to control her narrative. She worked with trusted journalists and royal correspondents, providing access and insight in exchange for more favorable coverage. It was a delicate dance, but one she had mastered through years of practice. Her influence within the royal household grew steadily. Staff members found her easy to work with, and she had a good understanding of the practical aspects of running a royal household. She wasn't interested in the glamorous public-facing aspects of royal life as much as she was interested in the mechanics of how things actually worked. When William announced his engagement to Catherine Middleton in November 2010, Camilla was genuinely pleased. She had watched William grow up, had seen the impact of his mother's death on him, and she understood the importance of him finding happiness. Catherine seemed like a sensible choice, attractive, well-educated, and from a stable family background. At first, Camilla saw Catherine as an ally rather than a threat. Catherine was young, inexperienced, and would need guidance as she learned to navigate royal life. Camilla positioned herself as a mentor figure, someone who could help the future queen consort understand the complexities of royal duty and public scrutiny. The early interactions between Camilla and Catherine were cordial and supportive. Camilla shared advice about dealing with media attention, about the importance of maintaining privacy, and about the ways to build effective working relationships with palace staff. Catherine was respectful and appreciative, understanding that Camilla's experience could be invaluable as she prepared for her new life. But beneath the surface, there were subtle tensions. Camilla was used to being the most important woman in Charles's circle, the one he turned to for advice and support. Catherine's arrival meant that dynamic was about to change. William was Charles's heir, and Catherine would one day be queen consort. The hierarchy was clear, but the reality of what that meant for day-to-day relationships was more complex. Catherine's background was also different from what the royal family was used to. She came from a successful middle-class family that had built their own wealth through hard work and business acumen. Her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, had created a party-planning company that served wealthy clients across the country. Catherine had been raised with a strong work ethic and a practical understanding of how to build success. This background gave Catherine certain advantages that Camilla recognized immediately. Catherine understood branding, marketing, and public relations in ways that came naturally to her generation. She had grown up with social media and understood how images and messages could be crafted and distributed instantly across the globe. During the engagement period, Catherine approached her preparation for royal life with the same methodical approach she had brought to her university studies and her work in her family's business. She studied royal protocol, learned about the various charities and organizations she would be expected to support, and carefully observed how other members of the royal family conducted themselves. Camilla watched this preparation with interest and growing respect. Catherine wasn't just beautiful and charming, she was intelligent and strategic. She understood that becoming a member of the royal family wasn't just about wearing beautiful clothes and attending glamorous events. It was about building a platform for meaningful work and creating lasting, positive change. The wedding planning period revealed more about Catherine's character. She was involved in every detail, from the choice of venue to the design of her dress to the selection of music for the ceremony. She understood the symbolic importance of each decision and how they would be interpreted by the public and the media. Camilla found herself both impressed and slightly concerned by Catherine's attention to detail and her natural instinct for what would work well with the public. Catherine seemed to understand intuitively how to balance tradition with modernity, how to honor the past while appealing to younger generations. As the wedding date approached, Camilla began to understand that Catherine wasn't going to be the typical royal bride who needed years to find her footing. Catherine had spent nearly a decade in a relationship with William, and she had used that time wisely to prepare herself for royal life. She wasn't going to stumble through her early years as a working royal. She was going to hit the ground running. The royal wedding on April 29, 2011, was a global spectacle watched by billions of people around the world. Camilla played her role perfectly, supporting Charles and representing the dignity of the royal family. But as she watched Catherine glide through the ceremony with grace and confidence, she began to realize that the dynamics of the royal family were about to shift in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. Catherine's wedding dress, designed by Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen, was exactly right. Elegant, traditional, but with contemporary touches that made it feel fresh and relevant. Her demeanor throughout the ceremony was poised and natural, never showing the nerves that might be expected from someone in such an overwhelming situation. After the ceremony, as the newly married couple appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, Camilla stood with the rest of the family and watched the crowd's reaction. The cheers were deafening, the enthusiasm was genuine, and the cameras captured every moment of joy and celebration. Catherine had already begun to capture the public's imagination in ways that reminded many observers of Diana's early years. But Camilla was experienced enough to know that wedding day popularity didn't necessarily translate into long-term success as a working royal. She had seen other members of the family struggle with the transition from private citizen to public figure, and she assumed Catherine would face similar challenges. What Camilla didn't fully appreciate yet was that Catherine had been preparing for this moment for nearly a decade, and she had learned from watching both the successes and failures of previous royal brides. Catherine understood that she needed to build her own identity within the royal framework, rather than simply trying to fit into existing expectations. In the months following the wedding, Camilla continued to offer guidance and support to Catherine, but she began to notice that Catherine rarely needed the help she was offering. Catherine seemed to have an intuitive understanding of how to balance her public duties with her private life, how to engage with the media without losing her privacy, and how to build meaningful relationships with the charities and organizations she supported. Catherine's first official engagements were carefully chosen and expertly executed. She visited schools and youth organizations, highlighting causes related to education and child development. Her approach was warm and genuine, and she had a natural ability to connect with people from all backgrounds. The media response was overwhelmingly positive. Fashion magazines analyzed her clothing choices, which struck the perfect balance between accessibility and elegance. News outlets praised her dedication and professionalism. Social media buzzed with admiration for her grace and authenticity. Camilla watched this early success with mixed feelings. She was genuinely pleased to see Catherine thriving in her new role, but she also began to understand that Catherine's natural talents and contemporary approach might overshadow her own contributions to the royal family. The generational difference between them was becoming more apparent. Camilla's approach to royal duty was rooted in tradition and protocol, while Catherine brought a fresh perspective that resonated with younger audiences. Catherine understood how to use digital platforms to amplify her message, how to create moments that would be shared and discussed across social media, and how to build a personal brand that complemented rather than competed with the institutional monarchy. As 2011 progressed into 2012, the pattern became clearer. Catherine wasn't just fulfilling her royal duties. She was excelling at them in ways that generated significant positive attention for the monarchy as a whole. Her presence at events elevated their profile. Her involvement with charities brought increased donations and volunteer participation, and her fashion choices influenced trends across the globe. Camilla began to realize that she was witnessing the emergence of a new kind of royal star, someone who could command attention and respect in ways that would reshape the public's relationship with the monarchy. Catherine wasn't just William's wife. She was becoming a significant public figure in her own right, someone whose influence would only grow as she gained experience and confidence. The seeds of what would become a more complex relationship between the two women were planted during this period. It wasn't that they disliked each other or that there was any overt conflict. Rather, it was the natural tension that develops when two strong personalities occupy spaces that, while technically distinct, inevitably overlap in terms of public attention and influence. Camilla had spent years building her position within the royal family, carefully cultivating relationships and establishing her role. Now she was watching someone else achieve in months what had taken her years to accomplish. Catherine's youth, beauty, and natural charisma gave her advantages that Camilla could never hope to match, no matter how hard she worked or how strategically she operated. As they prepared for their second year as royal colleagues, both women understood that they were entering a new phase of their relationship. The mentor-student dynamic was already shifting, and Catherine was beginning to establish herself as an independent force within the royal family. The question that lingered unspoken was how their respective roles would evolve as Catherine's star continued to rise and as the monarchy itself adapted to changing public expectations. The stage was set for a more complex dance of influence and authority, one that would play out over years and would ultimately reshape the hierarchy and dynamics of the modern British royal family. Camilla had reached for the crown of influence within the royal family, but Catherine was quietly demonstrating that she might be the one destined to claim it. The photographs from the Diamond Jubilee celebrations in 2012 told a story that few observers fully understood at the time. On the surface, they showed a united royal family celebrating Queen Elizabeth II's 60 years on the throne. But for those who knew how to read the subtle signs of royal dynamics, the images revealed a shifting power structure that would have profound implications for the future of the monarchy. Catherine stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, radiant in a cream Alexander McQueen coat, her presence commanding attention even among a crowd of senior royals. Camilla, positioned slightly behind and to the side, maintained her composed demeanor, but those who knew her well could detect a new tension in her bearing. The public's response to Catherine during the Jubilee celebrations had been overwhelming, and it was becoming clear that the younger woman was capturing hearts and minds in ways that went far beyond typical royal enthusiasm. The months following the Jubilee marked a turning point in the relationship between the two women. What had begun as a cordial mentor-student dynamic was evolving into something more complex. Catherine was no longer seeking guidance. She was setting her own course, and that course was leading her directly toward the kind of influence that Camilla had spent years building for herself. Catherine's pregnancy announcement in December 2012 shifted the dynamic even further. The news that William and Catherine were expecting their first child generated a level of global excitement that hadn't been seen since Diana's pregnancies in the 1980s. Suddenly, Catherine wasn't just a popular royal, she was carrying the future of the monarchy in the most literal sense possible. Camilla watched the media coverage of Catherine's pregnancy with careful attention. The intense interest in every detail of Catherine's condition, her fashion choices during pregnancy, and the preparations for the royal baby reminded her of the Diana years, but with important differences. Catherine seemed more in control of her narrative, more strategic about what she shared and what she kept private. The way Catherine handled the media attention during her pregnancy demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of public relations that impressed even seasoned palace advisors. She appeared at just enough events to maintain her public profile without overdoing it. She chose her outfits carefully to project both royal dignity and relatable motherhood. And she managed to generate positive headlines without creating any of the drama that had characterized Diana's relationship with the press. Camilla's own role during this period became more clearly defined by contrast. While Catherine was the focus of global attention as the mother of the future heir, Camilla continued her steady work supporting various charities and representing the monarchy at official functions. But the disparity in public interest was stark and impossible to ignore. The birth of Prince George in July 2013 marked another pivotal moment. The scenes outside the Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital, with crowds of well-wishers and international media, created images that would define Catherine's public persona for years to come. Her appearance on the hospital steps, radiant and confident just hours after giving birth, became iconic in the same way that Diana's similar appearances had been decades earlier. But where Diana had seemed overwhelmed by the attention, Catherine appeared completely in control. Her choice to wear a blue polka-dotted dress that echoed Diana's style while remaining distinctly her own sent a clear message about how she intended to honor the past while creating her own legacy. Camilla attended the christening of Prince George at the Chapel Royal in St. James's Palace, playing her appropriate role as step-grandmother to the future king. But the photographs from that day made clear where the public's attention was focused. Catherine, holding her son with natural grace, was the center of every image, the person everyone wanted to see and photograph. The period following George's birth saw Catherine grow into her role with increasing confidence and sophistication. She returned to her royal duties with a new authority, carrying herself as not just William's wife or George's mother, but as a senior member of the royal family whose opinions and choices mattered in their own right. Her approach to motherhood and royal duty became a model that younger women around the world admired and tried to emulate. She managed to be both aspirational and relatable, demonstrating that it was possible to fulfill significant public responsibilities while being a devoted mother. This balance had always been challenging for royal women, but Catherine seemed to achieve it naturally. Camilla, meanwhile, found herself in an increasingly complex position. Her years of experience and her deep understanding of royal protocol remained valuable, but Catherine's intuitive grasp of modern public relations was proving even more valuable in an era of social media and instant global communication. The subtle competition between them played out in various ways. When both women attended the same events, photographers and television cameras invariably focused more attention on Catherine. When they supported similar causes, Catherine's involvement generated more media coverage and public interest. When they made fashion choices, Catherine's outfits were analyzed and copied, while Camilla's were barely noted. This wasn't the result of any deliberate slight or conscious bias. It was simply the natural consequence of Catherine's youth, beauty, and the public's fascination with the future queen consort. But for Camilla, who had worked so hard to build her own platform and influence, the shift was both noticeable and concerning. The birth of Princess Charlotte in May 2015 reinforced Catherine's position as the most photographed and discussed member of the royal family. The public's excitement about the new princess, combined with Catherine's continued grace under intense scrutiny, solidified her status as the monarchy's most valuable public asset. Catherine's handling of her second pregnancy and recovery had been even more polished than the first time. She had learned from experience how to manage the media attention, when to make public appearances, and how to use her platform to highlight causes she cared about without being overshadowed by tabloid speculation about her personal life. By this time, Catherine had also begun to develop her own distinct charitable focus. Her work with children's mental health initiatives, her support for early childhood development programs, and her advocacy for outdoor education were creating a legacy that went beyond her role as William's wife or her children's mother. Camilla continued her own charitable work, focusing particularly on literacy programs and domestic violence support services. Her efforts were meaningful and impactful, but they generated less public attention than Catherine's initiatives. The disparity wasn't a reflection of the relative importance of their work, but rather of the public's greater interest in Catherine as a person and public figure. The challenges facing Camilla during this period were unique in royal history. Previous queen consorts had not had to compete for attention with future queen consorts who were already established as global celebrities. The traditional hierarchy of the royal family was being complicated by the realities of modern media and public interest. Palace staff began to notice the subtle ways in which this dynamic played out. Meeting agendas were structured differently when Catherine was involved. Media strategies had to account for the likelihood that Catherine's participation would overshadow other aspects of any event. Even the logistics of royal tours and visits were complicated by the fact that Catherine's presence would generate crowds and security challenges that weren't necessary for other family members. The 2016 Royal Tour of Canada provided a clear illustration of how dramatically the royal landscape had changed. William and Catherine's visit generated unprecedented international coverage, with Catherine's fashion choices making headlines around the world and the couple's interactions with Canadian citizens creating moments of genuine warmth and connection. Camilla and Charles conducted their own successful tours during this period, but the difference in public response was unmistakable. While Charles and Camilla were respected and welcomed, William and Catherine were celebrated as rock stars. The future of the monarchy was clearly tied to their success in ways that created both opportunities and challenges for the institution. Catherine's growth during this period wasn't just about public relations or media management. She was also developing real expertise in the areas she chose to focus on. Her work with children's mental health programs involved serious study and consultation with experts. Her advocacy for early childhood development was grounded in research and evidence-based policy recommendations. This depth of knowledge and commitment elevated Catherine beyond celebrity status into something approaching stateswoman status. She wasn't just a beautiful woman who wore lovely clothes. She was becoming a serious advocate for causes that mattered to millions of families around the world. The birth of Prince Louis in April 2018 completed Catherine's immediate family and further cemented her position as the most important woman in the royal family's future. With 3 children, including the heir to the throne, Catherine's place in royal history was secure, regardless of what else she might accomplish. But Catherine wasn't content to rest on the security of her position. She continued to expand her charitable work, taking on new patronages and developing innovative approaches to the issues she cared about. Her launch of the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood in 2021 represented the culmination of years of research and preparation, establishing her as a leading voice in an area that would define much of her future work. Camilla watched these developments with a mixture of admiration and concern. She genuinely respected Catherine's accomplishments and appreciated the positive attention she brought to the monarchy. But she also understood that Catherine's rising star meant that her own influence and importance were inevitably diminishing. The pandemic years of 2020 and 2021 provided new challenges and opportunities for both women. Catherine's virtual engagements during lockdown showcased her comfort with technology and her ability to connect with people even through digital platforms. Her family's participation in community support efforts, including William's work with emergency services and her own involvement with early childhood education initiatives, demonstrated their commitment to public service even under difficult circumstances. Camilla's work during the pandemic was equally meaningful, particularly her support for domestic violence services that saw increased demand during lockdown periods. But once again, Catherine's initiatives generated more public attention and discussion. The death of Prince Philip in April 2021 marked another significant moment in the evolution of royal dynamics. As the family gathered to mourn the Duke of Edinburgh, the television coverage and newspaper photographs made clear how the hierarchy of public interest had shifted. While the Queen was obviously the central figure, Catherine's presence and demeanor attracted almost as much attention as anyone else in the family. At Philip's funeral, Catherine's grace and dignity under the most solemn circumstances reinforced her status as someone the public could rely on to represent their feelings and values. Her ability to project both personal grief and institutional continuity demonstrated a maturity that belied her relatively short time as a working royal. As 2021 progressed toward 2022 and the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations, it became increasingly clear that Catherine had moved beyond being just another member of the royal family. She had become essential to the monarchy's future in ways that went far beyond her role as William's wife or the mother of future kings. The question facing Camilla was how to adapt to this new reality while maintaining her own dignity and continuing her own meaningful work. She had built her influence over decades of careful cultivation and strategic thinking, but she was now operating in a landscape where natural charisma and generational appeal were proving more powerful than traditional royal protocol. The stage was set for the final act of their complex relationship, one that would determine not just their personal dynamics, but the future direction of the monarchy itself. Catherine had demonstrated that she could capture public attention and affection in ways that reminded observers of the monarchy's greatest successes, while Camilla faced the challenge of finding her place in a family structure that was being reshaped by forces beyond anyone's complete control. The crown of influence that Camilla had worked so hard to claim was slipping from her grasp, not because of any failure on her part, but because someone else had arrived who seemed destined to wear it with even greater effect. The morning of September 8, 2022, began like any other at Clarence House, but by evening, the world had changed forever. Queen Elizabeth II's death at Balmoral Castle marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in the story of the British monarchy. For Camilla Parker Bowles, it represented the culmination of everything she had worked toward for decades. She was now Queen Consort, the title she had longed for and the position that would secure her place in history. But even as she assumed the highest rank a royal spouse could hold, Camilla found herself watching Catherine, Princess of Wales, step into a role that seemed to eclipse even her own newly elevated status. The title of Princess of Wales, which Catherine inherited automatically upon Charles's accession to the throne, carried with it a weight of expectation and public fascination that no other royal title could match. The days following the Queen's death revealed the true dynamics of the new royal order. While Camilla was technically the most senior woman in the royal family, Catherine commanded the lion's share of public attention and media coverage. The photographs from the family's first public appearance together after the Queen's death told the story clearly. Catherine, dressed in elegant black, her face a perfect mask of grief and dignity, drew every camera lens and every observer's eye. Camilla had prepared for this moment for years. She understood the protocol, the expectations, and the responsibilities that came with being Queen Consort. She had studied how previous Queen Consorts had navigated their roles, and she had developed strategies for making her mark while supporting her husband's reign. But what she hadn't fully anticipated was how completely Catherine would dominate the narrative of the new era. The walkabout at Windsor Castle on September 10th, when William and Catherine appeared alongside Harry and Meghan to view the floral tributes to the Queen, became one of the defining images of the transition period. Catherine's composure and grace under intense scrutiny, her ability to comfort grieving members of the public while managing her own visible emotion, demonstrated a level of public leadership that went far beyond her official role. Watching the coverage of that day, Camilla felt a complex mix of emotions. She was proud of how the family was handling the most difficult period in their recent history, but she was also acutely aware that Catherine had emerged as the emotional focal point for the nation's grief. The title Princess of Wales, which carried with it the memory of Diana and the promise of Catherine's future role as Queen, gave her a platform that even the title of Queen Consort couldn't match. The funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on September 19, 2022, provided the most significant test of the new royal hierarchy. As millions around the world watched the ceremony at Westminster Abbey, the television coverage and newspaper photographs revealed which members of the family truly captured public imagination. Charles, as the new king, was obviously central to the proceedings, but it was Catherine whose every gesture and expression was analyzed and discussed. Camilla played her role flawlessly during the funeral. She supported Charles, she maintained perfect composure throughout the lengthy ceremony, and she navigated the complex protocol requirements without a single misstep. But even as she performed her duties as Queen Consort with dignity and grace, she could see that the public's emotional investment was focused elsewhere. Catherine's behavior during the funeral became a masterclass in royal bearing under pressure. Her interactions with her children, her support for William, and her respectful acknowledgement of the Queen's coffin demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership the monarchy needed during its most solemn moment. She had become the person the public looked to for reassurance that the institution would continue with dignity and purpose. In the weeks following the funeral, as the new reign began in earnest, the pattern became even more pronounced. Charles's first address to the nation as king was respectfully received, but it was Catherine's first engagement as Princess of Wales that generated the headlines and social media discussion. Her visit to a children's hospice, where she was photographed embracing young patients and their families, created the kind of emotional connection that defined successful royal leadership. Camilla continued her charitable work with dedication and professionalism. Her initiatives supporting literacy, domestic violence awareness, and animal welfare remained important and impactful. She attended state banquets, accompanied Charles on official visits, and fulfilled all the traditional duties of a queen consort. But the harsh reality of modern royal life was that impact was increasingly measured by public engagement and media coverage, and in those areas, Catherine was operating on a completely different level. The coronation planning process revealed the new dynamics even more clearly. While Camilla was obviously central to the ceremony as the woman being crowned alongside Charles, much of the public discussion focused on what Catherine would wear, how she would present herself, and what her role in the ceremony would signal about the future of the monarchy. Catherine's approach to the coronation demonstrated the strategic thinking that had characterized her entire royal career. She chose to focus attention on the significance of the ceremony rather than on herself, but she did so in ways that reinforced her own importance to the institution's future. Her children's participation in the ceremony, particularly Prince George's role as a page, reminded everyone that she was not just supporting the current king, but raising the next generation of monarchs. The coronation on May 6, 2023, should have been Camilla's ultimate moment of triumph. After decades of public criticism and private struggle, she was finally being crowned as queen consort, receiving the recognition and status she had sought for so long. The ceremony was beautiful, the pageantry was spectacular, and she wore the crown with dignity and grace. But even on her coronation day, the coverage and commentary revealed where the public's true interest lay. Catherine, elegant in an ivory Alexander McQueen dress and the George VI festoon necklace, commanded attention that rivaled even the newly crowned queen consort. Her presence at the ceremony, her interactions with her children, and her obvious ease with the grand occasion reinforced her status as the monarchy's most compelling figure. The months following the coronation made the new reality even more apparent. When Charles and Camilla conducted state visits, they were received with appropriate respect and ceremony, but the level of excitement and media attention was modest compared to what William and Catherine generated wherever they appeared. The couple's visit to the United States in December 2022, even before Charles's coronation, had created the kind of global excitement that reminded observers of the monarchy's soft power potential. Catherine's work during her first year as Princess of Wales established her as more than just a popular royal. She became a serious advocate for causes that resonated with people around the world. Her Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood gained international recognition for its innovative approaches to child development. Her photography projects showcased both her artistic talent and her ability to capture intimate moments that humanized the royal family. Meanwhile, her fashion choices continued to influence trends and generate economic impact for British designers and brands. The Catherine effect on retail sales had become a measurable economic phenomenon, with items she wore regularly selling out within hours of her public appearances. This kind of cultural influence was impossible to manufacture or replicate. It was the natural result of her unique combination of beauty, style, and authenticity. For Camilla, watching Catherine's effortless success was both inspiring and challenging. She genuinely admired Catherine's talents and appreciated the positive attention she brought to the monarchy, but she also had to reconcile herself to the fact that her own long-awaited moment in the spotlight was being overshadowed by someone who seemed destined for even greater things. The personal relationships within the family remained cordial and supportive. Catherine continued to show appropriate respect for Camilla's position and experience, while Camilla offered guidance and support when asked. But the underlying tension was impossible to ignore. Two strong, accomplished women were operating in overlapping spheres, and the public had made clear which one they found more compelling. The challenge for Camilla was finding ways to remain relevant and influential while accepting that she would never be the most popular or most discussed member of the royal family. Her years of experience and her deep understanding of royal protocol remained valuable, but they were no longer enough to guarantee her a central place in the monarchy's public narrative. Catherine, meanwhile, continued to grow in confidence and authority. Her speeches became more polished, her charitable work became more impactful, and her presence at official events became more commanding. She was no longer just learning her role, she was defining it in ways that would influence how future princesses of Wales approached their responsibilities. The emotional climax of their complex relationship came not in any single dramatic moment, but in the gradual realization that Catherine had achieved something Camilla never could. Despite all her efforts, despite her official title, despite her years of dedication to royal duty, Camilla would always be remembered as Charles's second wife, the woman who came after Diana. Catherine, by contrast, would be remembered as the woman who restored the magic and relevance of the monarchy for a new generation. The crown that both women had reached for. Not the physical crown of jewels and gold, but the crown of influence, relevance, and public affection had settled naturally on Catherine's head. She hadn't grasped for it or schemed for it. She had simply grown into it through talent, hard work, and an intuitive understanding of what the modern monarchy needed to survive and thrive. In quiet moments at royal events, when photographers captured candid interactions between family members, the new dynamic was visible to those who knew how to look. Catherine stood at the center of most group photos, not because protocol required it, but because her presence naturally drew others toward her. Camilla, despite her senior rank, often found herself positioned slightly to the side, important, but no longer central. The final recognition of this shift came not in any official announcement or ceremonial moment, but in the simple reality of public attention and media coverage. When William and Catherine appeared together, they commanded global attention and generated positive headlines for the monarchy. When Charles and Camilla appeared together, they fulfilled their duties respectably, but generated only modest public interest. For Camilla, this reality required a profound adjustment of expectations and ambitions. She had spent decades working toward a position of influence within the royal family, and she had achieved the highest rank possible for a royal spouse. But she had also lived to see that traditional hierarchy matter less than natural charisma and generational appeal. Catherine had claimed the crown of public affection and cultural influence without even trying to take it. Her victory was complete not because she had defeated Camilla in any direct competition, but because she had demonstrated that some forms of royal success couldn't be earned or learned, they could only be embodied by someone with the right combination of personality, talent, and timing. As both women looked toward the future, the roles were clearly defined. Camilla would continue her important work as queen consort, supporting Charles and representing the monarchy with dignity and grace. But Catherine would be the one who defined the monarchy's public image, who captured hearts and minds around the world, and who would ultimately determine whether the institution remained relevant for future generations. The crown had been lifted, not in triumph over a fallen rival, but in the natural assumption of a destiny that had been apparent from the very beginning. Catherine's victory was complete, emotional, and transformative, not just for her personally, but for the entire future of the British monarchy.